All right, ready to dive into Matthew 19.
Let's do it.
This chapter is packed with stuff about relationships, humility, being devoted to God.
Yeah, Jesus just goes in. It's amazing how relevant all this is, even today, you know?
Totally. Like, what does real commitment in marriage even mean? Or, like, how can we have that simple faith that kids have? And what about when money gets in the way of following Jesus?
All those questions right there in this chapter.
So we'll tackle it all in 3 parts. First up, Jesus and the Pharisees arguing about divorce.
Oh, yeah, those Pharisees always testing him.
Right. So they ask him, is it okay for a man to divorce his wife for any reason?
They were trying to use the Mosaic law to trip him up, you know, because it did allow for divorce back then.
But Jesus doesn't just quote the law back at them.
No, he goes way back.
All the way to Genesis, at the beginning of creation.
Exactly. Like God made them male and female. He made them one flesh.
Not just 2 people with a contract.
Right. Like they become one.
And then he says that line we still hear today, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Boom!
So powerful. It's like marriage is sacred. It's huge.
Way bigger than just 2 people living together.
Totally changes how you see it.
It's a covenant, a holy bond, and it's supposed to last.
Yeah. I mean, Jesus does say there's an exception, like if someone cheats.
Right, because the world isn't perfect.
Exactly. But still, the main point is marriage. It's for life. It's about love and being faithful.
And that idea that marriage is forever, it kind of reflects the God's love for us, right?
Oh, I see what you mean.
His love never quits, never gives up. It's always looking to make things right.
Wow, that's a cool connection. It's not just about the rules. It's about, like, mirroring God's heart in our relationships.
Being faithful like that is hard, but it shows how amazing God's love is.
Totally.
Okay, moving on from marriage, let's talk about this story with Jesus and the kids. I love this one. It shows how much God values humility, and being real.
It starts with the disciples trying to get rid of the kids. Like, they thought the kids were annoying Jesus.
It's funny, right? Like, you can picture the disciples freaking out, trying to keep things organized. But Jesus just embraces the kids, welcomes them right in.
And he gets kind of mad at the disciples for trying to shoo them away.
He does. He says, let the little children come to me and don't stop them because the kingdom of heaven belongs to people like them.
He's fierce about it, Like, he's protecting them.
That's deep. The kids, they show what it means to be humble. They depend on others. And that's what you need to get into heaven.
They're not trying to be important or prove anything.
Right. They just trust and accept.
It's that pure, childlike faith.
So simple, so open, just trusting in something way bigger than you are.
Makes you think, how much are we messing up by overthinking everything, trying to be in control?
Good question. Where in your life do you feel that tension between control and trust? That's something to think about. Okay, last part for today. Let's talk about that rich young guy. This one always gets me thinking.
It's a classic story, right? It speaks to everyone, no matter what time period. This young guy, he has success, money, a good reputation, but something's missing.
Yeah, he asks Jesus, what do I have to do to get eternal life?
And he thinks he's got it all figured out.
He's been following the rules.
All the commandments.
But Jesus sees something else, something holding him back.
And then boom, Jesus drops a bomb. Sell everything you own, give it to the poor, and follow me.
Whoa. Talk about challenging his comfort zone, his security, everything he thought defined him.
And guess what? The guy walks away sad.
He can't let go of what he's built his whole life on.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it? He wants something more, but he can't let go of what he thinks matters. It makes you think, what are our riches? Those things we hold on to so tight, What would it take for us to let go?
That's a tough one. Makes you really look inside.
It does, right. And that's what Jesus is getting at. He's not saying money is bad, but it can become like an idol, more important than God.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah.
Especially now. There's always messages telling us to buy more, achieve more, be happier.
It's sneaky but powerful.
Yeah.
You can end up empty inside even if you have a ton of stuff.
True. But Jesus offers a different way, a path to what's truly valuable.
For sure.
Well, we've covered a lot in this chapter. God's plan for marriage, that beautiful idea of childlike faith, and this challenge of wealth. What stands out to you, connecting all this to our lives today?
I think it all comes down to surrender.
Surrender.
Yeah, like letting go of control in our relationships, giving up our pride so we can be humble, not being attached to money. It's about letting God be in charge of everything in our lives.
Making our hearts and actions match God's will, even when it's hard.
Exactly, even when we have to let go of things we love.
And that's where real freedom and joy are, right?
Yeah, it's not about trying harder on our own. It's about giving in to something bigger than us, a love that can change us deep down.
So how do we do that? How do we surrender in our relationships? It feels like our culture sees marriage as temporary. How can we make those commitments last, like God's love?
It starts with realizing relationships, especially marriage, they need work.
We can't just coast.
Nope. We got to put in the time, the effort, show love. It's about talking to each other, forgiving, giving grace.
Just like God gives us grace.
Exactly. We got to do that for others, especially those closest to us.
And we need to remember we're not perfect.
Oh, yeah, we're going to mess up.
So we got to be kind to ourselves and to those we love.
Totally.
It's like exercise. The more we forgive, the better we get at it.
That's a good way to put it. And we don't have to do it alone either.
Right. Having people to support us, friends, family, our church, that makes a huge difference.
For sure. We need those safe spaces where we can be honest, ask for help, and help others too.
Now, about that childlike faith, it's tricky as adults, isn't it? We've learned so much, it's hard to just trust simply.
It is, but I think it starts with being curious, like a kid. Yeah, remember how kids are always curious, wanting to learn, explore? What if we did that with our faith? Be open to new things.
Instead of just checking things off a list.
Exactly. What if we came to our faith with that same awe and wonder, like seeing it all for the first time?
Maybe even let go of some of those old ideas we've held on to forever.
Yeah. What if we let God surprise us?
Let him show up in new ways.
That's where real growth happens, when we leave our comfort zone and embrace the unknown. It's like that saying, the biggest thing blocking discovery isn't not knowing, it's thinking you already know.
That's deep. Okay, now the big one. Money and possessions. This one's tough in our gotta-have-it-all culture. We're told we need more, that our worth is tied to what we own.
It's everywhere, that message, and hard to resist. But I think the answer is generosity. When we focus on giving instead of getting, something changes inside us.
It's like hitting reset, spiritually. When we give freely, expecting nothing back, it loosens the hold of material things. It reminds us that real wealth is about relationships, experiences, making a difference.
It doesn't have to be huge donations or anything.
Right. Just everyday kindness.
Yeah, those little sacrifices show that our hearts are aligned with God's.
Like sharing a meal with someone who needs it. Or just listening to a friend who's struggling. Or volunteering our time for something we care about.
Exactly. Those small acts of love and generosity spread outwards, making the world a little better.
And when we're generous, something cool happens.
Yeah.
We start to feel more content.
We do.
Because we're not focused on what we're missing anymore, but on what we can give. We see the good things we already have. And that thankfulness brings a whole new level of joy.
It's funny how that works. The more we give, the more we get. Not stuff, but the things that really matter.
Yeah.
Love, connection, purpose, belonging.
So true. It really is. So much good stuff in there. It makes you think, okay, all these ideas about surrender, trusting God, how do we actually make them real in our lives?
Right. It's got to be more than just talk.
Exactly. So let's go back to those three big things. Relationships, faith, and money. Starting with relationships, how can we build those strong, lasting connections Jesus talked about? What does that look like every day?
Good question.
I think it starts with the little things we do.
The small choices.
Yeah, like choosing to forgive instead of holding a grudge, trying to understand instead of judging, putting the other person first, even when it's tough.
It's those little acts of love, that build something strong. And we got to remember, we're not perfect. We'll mess up sometimes. So being kind to ourselves and to the people we love, that's huge.
Like working a muscle, the more we practice forgiving and giving grace, the better we get at it. And like you said before, we don't have to do it all alone. Having good people around us, friends, family, our church, that helps so much.
Big time. We need those safe places to be open, to ask for help and support each other.
Now, about that childlike faith, it's weird, right? As adults, we've learned to analyze everything, ask questions. But Jesus tells us to come to him like a little kid, just trusting.
It's almost like we have to unlearn some things.
I think so. But I think a big part of it is being curious.
Curious.
Yeah, like kids are. They're always wanting to learn new things, explore. What if we had that same wonder about our faith, that openness to discover?
I like that. Instead of just going through the motions, what if we came to God with that sense of awe, like we're seeing it all for the first time?
And maybe we got to let go of some of our old ideas, the things we've always believed. What if we let God surprise us, show us something new?
That's where the real growth is, When we're willing to step outside our comfort zones, like that saying, the biggest thing blocking discovery isn't being ignorant, it's thinking you already know everything.
So true.
Yeah.
All right, last challenge. Money and stuff. This is a tough one in our culture, where everyone wants more. We're always told we need to buy more, that our value comes from what we own.
It's hard to escape that message, but I think the answer is generosity. When we focus on giving instead of getting, something shifts inside us.
Like a spiritual tune-up.
Yeah. When we give freely, not expecting anything back, it breaks the power of all that stuff. We remember that true wealth isn't about things. It's about relationships, experiences, making a difference in the world.
It doesn't have to be big, showy things either.
Right, just everyday kindness.
Those little sacrifices add up.
Exactly. They show God that our heart is in the right place.
Like sharing a meal, listening to a friend who's down, volunteering our time for a good cause.
All those things, those little acts of love, they ripple out and make the world a little better.
And when we're generous, we start feeling more content too.
Totally.
It's because we're not focused on what we're missing anymore. We see the good things we already have, and that thankfulness leads to more joy.
It's amazing the more you give, the more you get back. Not stuff, but the things that truly matter. Love, connection, purpose, that feeling of belonging.
Well said. So, wrapping up our deep dive into Matthew 19, I hope you're leaving with some hope and inspiration. What Jesus teaches here, it's challenging, but it's all about living a richer, more meaningful life. A life filled with love, surrender, and trust in God's goodness.
It's a journey, for sure. We're all a work in progress, right? But with God's help and people who care about us, we can figure out those tough relationships, grow in our faith, and live in a way that shows God's love.
Thanks for being with us on this deep dive. I hope you're encouraged to surrender to God, give grace to others, and find joy in living for His purpose.